back to our LinkedIn Lives. I'm Jacqueline Stockwell, CEO and founder at Leadership Through Data. I inspire, motivate and educate information leaders across the world to focus on their messaging through storytelling and visual aids. My goal over the next 12 months is to deliver an information management accelerant program called Empower. Now, I'm joined today with Rachel Mitchell again for the week 3 of this LinkedIn Live series for information leaders. So if you're joining us live, come and say hello in the comments. I would love to see where you're calling in from and where you're watching from as well. And if you've been with us for the last couple of weeks, what's landed with you? So over the last 2 weeks, I've been talking about the feeling of being left behind and how often that actually means that you're carrying too much. In week 2, we looked at why training does not always fix the problem, especially when what people really need is clarity, confidence, and support while they're doing their work. Now, today I've brought Rachel back into the studio and we're moving into the next bit, which is once you realise you are not falling and once you realise you may not just need more content, the next question becomes, where am I actually exposed and what should I do first? So, and this is the conversation that I want to have with Rachel today. And I think this is where a lot of information leaders get stuck, because this is rarely just one thing shouting for attention. There are multiple issues, so like records issues, governance gaps, data risks. We've got Microsoft 365 decisions. We've got retention questions, access problems like behaviour and culture, senior leadership expectations, and all those things that have been sitting quietly in the background waiting for someone to deal with them, right? So where do we start? And when everything feels important, it can become really hard to know where to begin because you've got so many things, you're juggling so many multiple things. So today, this is what I want to talk about with Rachel. It's not about creating fear. It's about making everyone feel that they're doing the right thing, but they're not doing anything wrong. And it's about trying to create that calm with the clarity. Because when you can name where you're exposed, you can stop carrying this sense of overwhelmness, don't know where to start, and you can actually start to make better decisions by breaking them down. And you can see what needs attention now, what can wait, prioritizing. Rachel and I talked about that in our last LinkedIn Live as well, the one that we did together. And one meaningful next step you could actually move forward. Now, if you are listening, one of the key things that I would recommend is to fill out the Leadership Through Data scorecard. It does give you 60 questions. It does give you a place to start if you're juggling all these multiple hats. So I'll make sure that that's in the comments as we go forward. So as we go through today, I want you to think about your own role, your own organisation, or the people you support. So where do you feel exposed? What is the noise that you're hearing? Where is there a niggle that something is not quite right? And where might clarity help you move from panic into action? Now, as always, I want it to be a real conversation. I'm very authentic, very real. So please comment as we go, ask questions, and take what you feel is useful. Now, I want to get into it now, Rachel, and I want you to introduce yourself.
Fantastic. So my name is Rachel Mitchell and hello everybody. I basically help organisations turn information governance from something complicated and overwhelming into something clear, practical and usable. So I've got senior experience across records management, data protection, public services, but I help leaders to see where they're exposed, where they're already strong, and also what to focus on first. Always, though, balancing that professional theory with practical action that supports real business goals.
Nice. And you're a principal consultant at Leadership Through Data, and you deliver the majority of our training and consultancy well. So they're the cool things. So, Rachel, I just kind of want to pick your brain. So why is clarity such a challenge in information leadership roles now?
So I think it's because information is kind of so ubiquitous. It sits across everything that an organisation does. So in senior leadership roles in information, for example, you're rarely dealing with one neat discipline in one neat little package. You're dealing with records management, data protection, freedom of information comes in, information security, and all of these things need to be balanced. And when you've sort of worked in this profession for a while, you realise that the challenge is not actually that we don't care or we don't know enough. It's actually that information risk is often so fragmented, so it's hard for one single person to have that complete view. So when everything feels important, clarity can become more valuable than actually more information about the issues.
Agreed. And I love that word, and I've been trying to remember that. Ubiquitous.
Ubiquitous.
Ubiquitous. That's an amazing word. I don't even know what that is, but I love
Everywhere.
that you put that in the context of this. And I'm quite an intelligent person, Rach, but that is a huge word I've never heard before. So thanks.
I've probably
thanks.
used it in the wrong context. That would be...
No, it was so funny how my mind was working then, because I was like, oh, what is that word? And I kept on just like repeating that word in my mind. So that was a great response to my question. Thank you. So why do so many people still get stuck in the mundane, the operational, the analysis, the reactive or the firefighting, when they're not looking at the sort of proactive elements of their jobs?
I think it's because reacting feels like productive. So if we're actually also working in senior roles, sometimes that's what's expected. So we talked about this in week 1, actually, about the immediacy that everyone feels like they need a response. It's being brave enough to say, actually, by doing all of that immediate response, we're moving sideways rather than forwards. So taking time to sort of pause, assess and make deliberate decisions can feel uncomfortable to start with, because you don't look visibly busy, or you might not have replied to somebody within 10 milliseconds. But it's often where we need to be. So it's almost thinking about actually not about the volume of things we've got to do, but actually the priority of things. And that's where people, I think, really struggle in this day and age.
Yeah, and it's that time management thing that we talked about in the week 1. It's the prioritization, and it's only doing things that drive the strategy forward or drive the business forward, rather than the other things that you could actually ask somebody else to do and kind of order at the time. So I think there's some really good, and one of the key things, and I think if you spend most of your time in reactive mode, you're not going to go into the proactive. Thanks, Rach. The proactive mode was actually where you need to be spending your time as an information leader, having those conversations, building those relationships, and really kind of getting people talking about information management, data protection, privacy within the organisation, so you can make those influence. So I want to think about what kinds of exposure do people often sense before they articulate them clearly?
Yeah, okay. I think professional instinct is really important. I often talk about gut feeling in relation to stuff, and quite often we can sense that something's not right, even before we've done any analysis or we've confirmed that actually something's a bit awry. We normally have that sense. So experienced sort of leaders can often sense that exposure before you've really mapped it out. And people will say things like, I don't think we know what information we hold, or I don't think our retention is happening consistently. But it's all about thought. It's not actually been pulled down into kind of an actual analysis and action. So I think we often see symptoms before we identify the root cause. And it might show up as things like repeated access queries from people, or we're actually not providing the right responses in terms of things like subject access because we haven't got access to all of our information consistently. It might be things like relying on people's local knowledge rather than relying on corporate knowledge. So we go to people rather than go to systems or records. And I think really people often find those symptoms before they actually understand what the risk actually is.
And do you think there's an element of like making emotional decisions based on what you just described because you haven't got the full picture?
Yeah, I think there can be, but there's also that thing about self-preservation. It's almost like if there's something that's coming across your desk that you know is going to hit really hard, sort of at senior management level, like a really difficult subject access request or something, actually the self-preservation makes you deal with that issue rather than trying to sort of satisfy the root cause as well, I think.
Yeah. So what happens when somebody or say something is off but you can't name it?
I think it creates anxiety, uncertainty, especially if you kind of have that idea that something wrong, but you can't yet explain it confidently. And I've been in that situation where people sort of keep saying to me things like, so what actually is the issue with our hard copy records, say? And you kind of know it's an issue, but you haven't had chance because you're juggling lots of things to actually dig down and say, actually, this is what the action plan looks like. But it's actually okay to say, I haven't prioritised that yet. That will come. And if you've got a nice plan that you can show them, even better. But I think the moment we can name something, we start understanding it, we can start measuring it, we can start managing it in terms of actions. And I often feel like, when you feel like the edge of space, you start to think about what's beyond the edge of space. Those problems that we kind of know are there, but we don't really know the extent of them, is like thinking about the edge of space. It makes you feel a bit sick. I'm actually doing it now. You feel a bit sick when you think about the edge of space because you can't quantify it. You can't put an action plan in place because you don't know enough. And it's the same thing. But once you actually start digging into it, it becomes more of a manageable problem. The edge of space never will. That will always make me feel a bit sick.
I was going to say the edge of space. I'm trying to picture that in my mind there, Rach. So some of the key things for people listening now, I would definitely hit over to their Leadership Through Data scorecard because that will give you a really nice rounded view of the compliance aspect. But key thing first, do that time management audit because that will give you the edge of space that you're describing is the only way that I can kind of feel it in my brain right now because I'll give you that breathing space as well. So if you didn't hear week one, you basically do a time management audit, draw a line down a piece of paper, 95% and 5% in each of the columns, write down everything you do in that 95%. And then, only then, once you've done that, you then want to look at what you're actually doing, which is 5% of your job role that takes that business forward and takes that strategy forward. And then you'll actually end up with this huge picture, as you say, edge of space. You've got everything right now in your space. And the edge of space is that 5% of the future, of what the future will hold for me when I'm doing the stuff that I'm actually supposed to be doing. So I think that's really good. And it will lessen that anxiety, as you said, because I think that is...
Definitely.
Burnout, stress, it all comes with when you've just running like a headless chicken. Really.
Yeah, there's just one soundbite around that as well that I remember being told that sticks in my head, which is you can't manage a risk you can't describe. And I think that's really good.
Yeah, agreed. So how do we help people recognise risk without scaring them?
This is where we have to focus on sort of exposure and proportionality and all of those things rather than everything's a disaster. So it's not about frightening people. It's not always about worst case scenario. It's also about actually what's the minimum viable product? What's the minimum we can do to mitigate the majority of that risk? Everything is not going to be perfect, people, ever. So we have to make those judgments. And if you strive for perfection, you will continually depress yourself because you will fail. So we need to think about actually sort of the asking us a series of questions. What could happen? So what could happen in terms of this issue or event, or how likely is it? So that's almost like your impact and likelihood for a risk. What's the impact look like for the organisation? And actually, what confidence do we have that we can control that now? And if any of those answers aren't what you need, then you start to think about an action plan to actually either identify what's really happening under the hood or turning over that stone, whatever scenario you want to describe. And then you can start to actually think about what the plan looks like. But we don't want to do that whole frightening people. We do have to put some realism in it. So actually, if we don't do this, this is what the consequence might be, because otherwise we'll never get traction when we're up against much more, I don't know, topical things that are actually a bit more attractive to a managing director, like, dare I say, the AI word. We haven't mentioned it yet. Have now.
I was going to do it. You made me to it. No.
But it's about actually, it comes back, we talked about it in week 1, selling what we need to do. It's that communication and how we do it, isn't it? So the goal is actually awareness and buy-in, not anxiety.
Yeah, and I think you picked up a couple of good points there. Good enough, like it's perfection is not a thing, so just strive for good enough. And I'm very much of a principle, put something out there, good enough. People will give you feedback and then they'll help you make it perfect if you strive for perfection. I mean, comparison is the thief of joy in my view, Rachel. So good enough is always a good benchmark to go to. And also AI, when you're talking about risks. So I think it is a really good sort of tool to say if we're rolling out AI, actually with our information management and our privacy, we need to do this and this first to make it more easable, digestible, so good
governed
stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Governed, that's the right word. Governed. Yeah. Took a Scottish accent there as well, right? So it's good stuff coming out rather than garbage out, gospel, garbage in, gospel out. Which actually someone told me yesterday, which I loved that analogy about AI.
Yeah.
So, because obviously it just reuses what it churns out, doesn't it? Okay, so what does good look like versus risky looks like? And what does that actually mean in practice?
Yeah, so as we've said, it doesn't mean perfect. And that's an important lesson for senior leaders as well. And mature governance, I think, is not about pretending every risk has been eliminated. And we've said before, it's not about trying to tackle everything today. It's about planning. So good for me looks like understanding what our information is all about. And I'm sorry, first principles, information asset registers, my favourite thing, business classifications. What do we have? We don't have to go granular. It needs to be good enough. We need to know what our big buckets look like. Where's our risk data is really important, and people still don't identify that. Also knowing who owns what, allocating accountability and responsibility, because we can't do everything. So it's having those baseline frameworks in place, having sensible controls in place so that we know how and when things are going slightly awry. So it's not just about us having that gut feeling. We know when things are going a bit off because we have controls that tell us things are wrong. And also then, I think for me, it's being able to explain to everybody in the organisation why you're doing what you're doing and why that's more important than something else. Yeah. So it's being able to tell that story again. And I think risky often looks like uncertainty. And all of the things I've just mentioned, if we haven't got those basics in place, actually everything is a little bit uncertain because we don't know who to go to talk about that particular data and information. We don't know how to identify when the wheel is falling off before it becomes a reputational issue. So it's thinking about good governance really being not perfection, but being visibility and being accountability, I think.
Beautiful. I love that. So how can someone actually describe what needs attention now versus what can actually wait? Because, you know, there's prioritization in here. So what is now and what can wait?
I think there's 3 questions that we need to ask ourselves or ask the people that know that data and information best. What's the impact if we do nothing? What's going to happen? What is the worst case scenario? How likely is the issue to get worse if we don't tackle it now? So is it going to sort of come back to bite us even worse a bit later on? And actually, how difficult is it to improve? And I'd probably ask a fourth to that, which is, where is the resource that's going to improve it? Have we got that resource available to us now, or is it something we need to plan for? Because again, if we've got a team of, say, 3 doing all of this juggling around our information governance, we can't also then tackle major change programs. So resourcing, I think, is the fourth factor that you need to bring into that. And not everything can be fixed immediately. So again, governance at its best is about sequencing, deciding what comes first, what can wait. It's not about trying to do everything in one hit.
Yeah. So why is it? So once you've done time management study, once you've done the scorecard, once you've done everything you've described, prioritization, why is choosing one meaningful thing to focus on so powerful?
Well, for me personally, I like to tick something off.
Yeah, me too. Good girl.
And I bet you, and everybody on this call, have you added something to a list so you could just tick it off again because you'd forgotten to add it in the first place? I have. There's something really satisfying about ticking something off a list. And that's for you, that's for your team, and that's also for the organisation. I've just been shown a risk register in an organisation that makes me feel, again, slightly sick. It's covering so many things and it's so complicated, I just can't be bothered to read it, let alone decide what the action needs to be. If we choose one thing, it creates momentum, it shows traction, it's good for our professional development because we can use that in our annual appraisals. And if people have a key priority, rather than having 10 priorities, it allows them to make really good visible progress. So I think like one meaningful improvement in that way is worth 10 unfinished initiatives. So decide what you're doing now, get it finished, get everybody on board that you need to do it. It builds confidence in your team and in the people around you, because you're then somebody that doesn't just talk about the problem, you actually give the organisation a solution. And I think that is genius.
Yeah, and I think there's a really big thing, the point you've got is like in the morning, or I know some of our team actually do it. They get in the morning, before they get in the morning, they write down the 3 things, one thing they're grateful for and the 3 things that they actually want to achieve from the day.
Yeah.
And then they focus on those 3 things, so they're the top priority things. And the sense of achievement when you've got like the space analogy that you talk about with everything all over the place is actually really, really important. And it's that discipline of, you know, if something comes in, you then have to prioritize that. Does this go above my list that I've got for the 3? And then you must reprioritize. So by the time you get to the end of the day, you can tick those 3 things off and then think, wow, I had a good day. I'm good at my job, you know, and you get that sense of accomplishment, don't you? So
you really do.
What should somebody do if like everything feels urgent? I mean, we've talked about prioritization, we've talked about time management. What else can you add to the mix there, Rach?
I think really, I always do the Moscow thing. And I think I mentioned this in week 1. So what must I do today, this week, this month, this quarter? So we can actually do that kind of must, should, could, not just as a daily task list, which is important for us to feel we've achieved, and I totally agree with that, but also then think about actually, what am I achieving in this quarter? And as a team, or as an individual that's planning for a team or an organisation, don't go lower than a quarter, because you're just putting pressure on yourself. And by quarter, I mean a financial year quarter. So like quarter 1 would be April, May, June. So it's thinking about, what must I do in that quarter? What could I do if the resources become available, maybe, you know, if there's other factors that need to be considered? And actually, what am I not doing? That really important thing to say, I am not doing that this quarter. I am going to be doing that in quarter 3, say. So you have a plan, and you can actually say, not everything can be tackled in one hit. And then it allows you to have those grown-up discussions with your bosses, with the management teams, whoever, and I think I mentioned this before, that if they come and say, actually, you need to do this quarter, you can say, fine, but I'm now not doing that. And they understand the consequence.
Yeah, agreed. And one of the things that we do on the Leadership Through Data Empower Accelerator is work on a 30, 60, 90 model. So you're talking about a quarter as 3 months. So what you're doing for the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then you automatically move them around, because some people have identified that they're not goal orientated. I mean, I'm insanely goal orientated. I need goals that just keep me going. But it's a really nice methodology that fits in with what you're describing, is what you're going to do in the next 30 days, what you're going to do in the next 60 days, and what you're going to do in the next 90 days.
Yeah.
So what can shift someone when they can finally see the situation's clear? So they've, completed all the lovely things that we've said about, got their time management, got their priorities, they've done their scorecard, so they know where to focus on their information management and privacy. What can shift? What's the shift that somebody, when they can finally see that their situation is far more clearer than it was previous?
I think the first thing is relief. There's that sense of, you've got a plan. And actually, quite often, that thought of the edge of space is never as bad when you pull it down. So when you say it's something like you're looking at how you're doing review and retention, which is notoriously difficult in any organisation. I don't care who you are. It is really difficult. But if you pull that down into bite-sized chunks, you get that relief that you know where it's really bad, where actually some areas are doing better than you expected, because there's some professional person there that's trying to drive it. And actually, once you know what your plan is, and that clarity has replaced your uncertainty, it gives you a sense of professional confidence that if someone does come and ask you a question about review and retention, say, you can answer it without saying, I haven't quite looked at that yet. So it comes back to what I said really earlier about once you've described something and can describe the risk associated with something, people know that you're starting to manage it. So I think that really helps to sort of take that massive amorphous task that we feel like we've got, and it actually brings it down into something, and I think it's relief once you've done that.
Yeah. So I want to swap your hats, Rach, now for the last question for you. So you helped me build the scorecard, the Leadership Through Data scorecard. So we focused it around on all the things we've been talking about over the last 3 weeks, from professional development to, retention, where you are in your organisation.
Yeah.
If you weren't a Leadership Through Data person and you were filling in the scorecard, how would that benefit you in terms of information management going forward?
Okay, so I think it would benefit me personally and professionally. So the scorecard, well, actually taking it back from the scorecard, when we first thought about the Empower programme and we were designing a beautiful flower with petals, the petals all relate to the skills that I need personally and professionally in order to solve the problems that the organisation's looking at. So I think the scorecard allows you, and I always say this, to say your as-is position, and it would tell me exactly where I am now, so to bring some clarity to that mess that we're not quite sure about. But then most importantly, it prioritises with red, amber and green what I actually need to concentrate on. And then at least you've got a starter for 10 to say, actually, this is the start of my plan. You can rearrange that depending on resourcing, organisational priorities, but it gives you that start point in order to have those conversations that say, I'm doing this now because an outside verification has told me, and that's also important, an external verification has told me that that's more important. And for some reason, some organisations listen to external voices more than they listen to yours or mine within our own organisation.
Yeah, agreed. And it's free to do, and you get a free
It's
report at the
free.
end of it
It's
as
free.
well.
Let's
So
say that again. It's free.
it's free to complete. It's just, well, it's time. You've got to spend sort of, well, it depends how
Yeah.
long it takes you. I'm dyslexic and ADHD, so it takes me longer to read. That can be 20 minutes in my view, because I have to take a long time reading. But it's free to do, and you get a report as well. So, Rachel,
Yeah.
it's been really lovely. I've not seen any comments in the chat or any questions in the chat as we've gone forward. So we're just going to wrap up today's session. So I think the key messages for us is clarity. You know, stop worrying about what you've got, take stock, work out your time management, work out your prioritization, and for the things
Yeah.
that don't move the business forward, stop doing it. Order
Take
it
a
out.
time out.
Take a time out, 100%, but prioritizing when you get in the morning, pick those 3 things that you want to do and tick off and have that sense of achievement. Because when we are carrying a lot, everything feels urgent. I mean, everything feels urgent. Everything feels risky. We feel a bit
Overwhelming.
anxious. We feel overwhelmed. You know, everything will feel like it needs your attention right now. And that can be exhausting because you end up trying to hold everything in your head. And
Yeah.
that can be exhausting as well, and they can lead to burnout. But when you pause and actually look at where you might be exposed, some changes, you stop dealing with that kind of foggy feeling of, oh my God, this
Yeah.
is too much, and you start being able to say, actually, this area needs my attention first, like you've said. And this is where I can prioritise my time effectively. That helps me move forward what I'm supposed to be moving forward. Now, what matters, the thing that matters, because you don't create the progress from trying to fix 10 things at once, as you described. 3 things, choose one meaningful thing. You've talked about your quarters. I've talked about my 30, 60, 90,
Yep.
and then you can really kind of break them down. So I really hope today has brought some really meaningful thoughts to everybody who's been listening. Please don't skip a beat. I'll be back here next week with Andrea McIntosh, and we'll be talking about more and more insanely wonderful things. And then I've got some surprise guests for the week after that. But right now, I really want you to carry on being bold, being awesome, being brave, and being beautiful. Now, reflect on where you are, complete the scorecard. I'll pop that in the comments as we go forward. If you want to check out your influencing score, JackieSpeaks.com also has an influencing score, which is personally just for you. So head over to the website and complete that out as well. That's also free, and it gives you not so much of a good shiny report, but it gives you some areas for improvement. Rachel, it's been absolutely sensational today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for joining us. We've had a large round of registrations, and we'll see you all next week at the same time.
Super. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.